Out of everybody on the podcast, who would be your sidekick? Or who do you consider to be your sidekick?
I mean, clearly Dave.
Dave is your sidekick?
What?
Yeah.
No, I feel like out of everybody, Brad has sidekick energy, and he would tell you that himself.
He is literally male slave, though.
He's everybody's bitch boy.
Okay, male sidekick Brad.
Male side. Okay, we can't just change his name.
We didn't.
Yeah, he's still Brad.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, well, who's yours then?
Well, I mean, now that I have Casey, I don't need any of you anymore.
Well, we'll make sure that we tell Casey that.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with
Actually,
that.
she'll probably be stoked.
Yeah, she'd be excited. But yeah, I feel like she's my, she's just my person now. Fuck you guys.
You my boy, Blue.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to another It's a Mimic episode where we continue our conversation on player options in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Adam, and with me today are Megan and Dave, and this episode is called Sidekicks, Upfront with the Backup.
Love that. Adorable. In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, this panel of Dungeon Masters will be exploring the optional rules in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything for building non-player characters who join the party and actually progress the power with your player characters. But how do you keep combat from bogging down? When do you award a sidekick? How do you keep agency and involvement balanced?
All right, so this strikes me as kind of one of those things that you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. Where do you guys fall on this?
Do you want to roll initiative?
Yeah, let's do it.
I want the green one.
I want the red one.
17.
15.
11.
I love it. I freaking love it. I love sidekicks because it gives me something else to do, and it allows me to add more danger.
More danger.
You guys were level 2 with a sidekick and fighting purple worms because you had sidekicks and NPCs.
That's true.
And I killed one.
An NPC and a sidekick? Yeah.
Well, the purple worm.
The purple worm. Yes, you did kill purple worm at level 2. You also punched gelatinous cube at level 1.
And lived.
You are not as smart.
We're having a great time.
Confidently incorrect.
Who was next?
15.
15, yeah.
I struggled with it because as a player, this is absolutely one thing I want to do. I want to play around with. I want to manage and have some extra stuff to do. But as a DM, I don't want this anywhere near my table. This is just another person to go in the initiative order, and that just slows everything down because I run it that way. So I think from the DM side, I gotta hate it, but from the player side, these things are great.
I love it both ways.
Not even touching that, Megan.
God damn it.
Oh,
there you go. That's
how droll.
Oh my god. But no, for real. As a DM, I think that it adds a little sense of urgency, and like if you kill them off, it adds a little sense of danger to your characters. And then as a player, it adds a little bit of an emotional connection.
Yeah,
right?
it gives
like if
more stake in it, right?
Yeah, if you're afraid to role play with the people at the table because they're brand new, give them a sidekick. Gives them somebody to talk to who's not the weirdo in the corner.
It gives them a character to kill that isn't their main character.
Yeah, make your players cry.
Well, that is always the goal, right? But that's why I kick them under the table.
Tears.
Okay, before we get any deeper into the conversation about sidekicks, let's cut to a quick ad break.
We've previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on player options in 5th edition. For all of those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. And if you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
Before we get any further into this ad break, I would just like to take a second to thank Papa Squat 2000, Travis Coleman, Spencer Mosher, and Brandon Music for joining our Patreon. Thank you so much. It means a lot. There is a lot happening at It's a Mimic this week because it's always a lot of fun for us when we have an anniversary. For those of you who have stuck around for a couple of years, you'll know that we always drop a random special about a random topic on January 29th. And this year, we have 2. This Saturday, all patrons will be able to celebrate a successful 4 years of It's a Mimic and join Terry and me as we unbox and critique the deluxe version of arguably the most famous D&D adventure in the last decade. And here on the regular channels, Megan, Terry, and I laugh harder than we have in a long time as we address 40 questions about the end of Game of Thrones. But before that, on Friday, we've got the final Legend Lore Online episode for Brass Tier patrons, where I tackle all the D&D Beyond exclusive releases from 2022. And before that, we have one of the busiest days in the podcast's history. Now that our giant series is done, it's time to unveil a brand new series that's been spearheaded by some of the most devious and treacherous minds to ever roll dice. They're going to dig into some of the most atmospheric and grossest enemies in all of fantasy tabletop role-playing games, and they're going to do it on a monthly basis, with new episodes dropping every 4 weeks. To celebrate this series launch, we're even releasing a supplemental episode for Silver Tier patrons. And finally, releasing on Thursday as well for Brass Tier patrons and above, is the unboxing and first impressions of Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen Deluxe Edition. I went through the book myself last month, but this time I sit down with our resident board game king and figure out what exactly the Warriors of Krynn offers to people interested in more than just the Dragonlance book. By the end of the week, there will be 17 episodes available on Patreon, wrapping up the first month, and then we're going to pump the brakes a little bit and slow down to a more regular pace there. But for now, to celebrate the end of one fantastic year and the start of an even better one, I hope you enjoy 7 episodes in a single week. Thank you to everyone for sticking with us so far. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, so first of all, I spent a lot of fucking time thinking about sidekicks, like a lot of time thinking about it, so bear with me on this.
Fair enough.
Sidekicks are so built into our zeitgeist that we don't really think about them as being secondary characters anymore in most popular media. We don't consciously pigeonhole characters into sidekick status anymore. As such, it took me a while to determine who qualifies as a true sidekick and who is just a partner or an extended side character. Is Han Solo a sidekick? Is Beavis? What about Gandalf or Buzz Lightyear or Lilu from The Fifth Element? Any of those sidekicks? Anakin's the Padawan, but is he a sidekick? Scooby-Doo is the name on the show, but he's not really the hero, so he does kind of fit into the slot of a sidekick most of the time. Luigi runs around independently of Mario more often than not, and never even interacts with him half the time. So is he a sidekick? Who has more impact on the story, Snow White or Prince Charming? Who's the actual main character when Matt Smith is the 11th Doctor? And who's the main fucking character in the shit show that is the entire Terminator series? Yeah. Everyone gets sidekick status at some point during that, and then not. And then again, maybe, and then just murdered in the opening credits sometimes. So, it's okay, they'll undo it in the next movie.
Yeah.
So I did some digging and some Googling, and I went for a long freaking walk on Saturday morning so I could clear my head about it, because this drove me nuts for about 3 days, and I could not find an answer about what makes a sidekick. There's a bunch of conflicting information. So I narrowed it down to about 4 clear rules that are my own. And the reason that we're talking about it is because when you apply a sidekick to D&D, you should be following these rules. 1, they support, enable, and encourage the main character's agency, but they keep their own agency to the scene and not the story. What I mean by that is they're here right now to help you with your thing. When they have their own thing to do, they go away and it's passive. I go home to spend a quiet evening with my wife. I go home to work in my workshop to make a little extra coin. There's no big story agency there.
Yeah, you fade to black until they come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
2, their arcs are always smaller than the clearly defined main character's arc, and they spend less time in the spotlight. When you think about your sidekick, you need to, even if they're the quest giver, and sometimes they can be a mentor or a quest giver, but they don't necessarily have to be. Not every quest giver is a sidekick. They can, but again, they're not in the spotlight. They just push the story forward. 3, they provide a foil, emotionally, intellectually, or thematically, for the main character to bounce off of. And I don't mean a mirror image. That's usually the antagonist. Moriarty to Sherlock, right? Marvel movies are so fucking bad for that. It's the exact same powers, but a different guy, but evil, right? I mean, the first Iron Man movie, Ant-Man, every one of Captain America's bad guys, like, they're just the inverse version of, and that's not what we're talking about. Those aren't sidekicks. Even though they might appear to be sometimes, they're not truly the antagonist of the story. So think Winter Soldier is a good example. He is a sidekick. He looks for a moment to be the bad guy. He appears to be, but for the most part, he teams up and he is there to make Cap look bigger and better. So I started to list out the famous sidekicks, and I realized that there are sidekicks from pretty much every genre, even though we tend to think about superheroes mostly because of Robin and Bucky Barnes. They're the 2 most famous ones, but we have Jimmy Olsen, Kato from Green Hornet, Ned to Spider-Man in recent years, right? These are clear sidekicks that follow all 4 of the other rules.
Yeah, the guy in the chair.
The guy in the chair.
Yeah.
In science fiction, we have Chewbacca, who's clearly Han Solo's sidekick. R2 and 3PO act as sidekicks to move the plot forward or to be a foil off of Luke getting that hologram at the beginning.
Yeah, they're even sidekicks to each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Morty from Rick and Morty, Bender from Futurama, Ford Prefect, Newt from Aliens, even Doc Brown slides into sidekick status half the time.
I love the Newt call out.
Yes.
Newt's adorable.
I have strong misgivings about the movie Aliens.
Yeah.
Except for Newt. Newt is my favorite mostly.
Good soup.
Mostly. In comedy, you get Barney Rubble, Ethel from I Love Lucy, Silent Bob, Garth from Wayne's World. George Costanza is clearly a sidekick. There are tons even in drama movies. I was thinking of Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Goose from Top Gun, Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad, although you could argue that he does in later season get his own story.
Yeah.
But in season 1, they were planning to kill him at the end of the season. There was no big arc there. He was there so Walter White could break some bad.
Have his moment.
Yeah. In cartoons, we get Snoopy, Genie from Aladdin, Gromit, Penny and Brain from Inspector Gadget, Patrick from SpongeBob, and my personal favorite is Launchpad McQuack.
What a great character.
So good.
Yeah.
You'll notice that a lot of the times they even have more power than the hero, but they don't have more agency, and that's the difference. Doc Brown is smarter than Marty, but he does less. Genie has more power than Aladdin, but his hands are bound by what he can do, right? So,
yeah.
In horror, we have Willow to Buffy, Randy Meeks from Scream, Ed from Shaun of the Dead, the dog from I Am Legend, whose name is Sam, I think.
Sam?
Couldn't tell you.
And hot take, I believe that the main priest from The Exorcist is actually the sidekick. Yes, he does the big thing at the very end of the movie, but he is there to just beef up the other priest for like an hour and a half of that movie.
Yeah.
In fantasy, we have Sala and Short Round from Indiana Jones, Donkey, Braun from Game of Thrones, Tattoo from Fantasy Island, Gabriel from Xena, Ron and Hermione, and Samwise Gamgee, who is a sidekick. Come at me.
No, 100% sidekick.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Now, there are usually, when it comes to evil sidekicks, they're just henchmen. Like, there are very few real evil sidekicks that push the agency forward and act as a foil instead of just saying, yes, sir, right away, sir, and then off they go. For the most part, Bond villains are just henchmen.
With a gimmick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Iago from Aladdin, Smee from Hook, Samuel L. Jackson's very problematic character from Django Unchained, and Starscream, they are foils. They are there to be sidekicks. But I kept coming back to what are in my head the 4 most classic sidekicks of all time. Tinkerbell, Igor, Tonto from the Lone Ranger, and of course Dr. Watson. Do you guys have any, have I clearly missed a sidekick?
I like that how, like, out of all of these, a classic to you is Tinkerbell.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, Peter Pan is such an old story, and she shows up, in my head, she's not Peter Pan's sidekick, she's Wendy's sidekick. Every time that they get into any sort of shit, Tinkerbell is around, and when she's not there, they still get into shit without her, but it's not quite as effective. Tinkerbell is, I think in the original story, she's very clearly Peter Pan's sidekick, but in my head, it's all about Wendy. That's the main character in Peter Pan.
Fair.
Have you noticed that there's not a whole lot of female sidekicks? I mean, outside of comic books, there's all sorts, but like...
Well, it's because they're built to be killed off to make the other male characters be extremely extravagant. There's a word for that in writing. What is that word?
Fiction.
Shitty.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna have to Google it. But there's an actual word in writing that's used for when female characters are utilized to make a male character seem stronger or get beefed up for something that happens to the female character.
Well, women are always the thing to earn. They're the trophy. You save the maiden.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way back. I mean, we can sit there and talk about toxic masculinity all you want, but Rapunzel, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, these were helpless women that needed to be saved.
They had sidekicks, though.
They did have sidekicks.
Yeah.
But how often are the girls the sidekick? Even in today's media, when you have a powerful girl, 9 times out of 10, she outshines the male. Like, it's a female empowerment thing beyond them. So it's almost overcompensating when we're talking about sidekicks, when it's that conversation.
What was the name of Daenerys's female...
Missandra.
Yeah, that's immediately what came to mind when I was thinking, like, usually if there's a female sidekick, it's to another female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that Hermione is one of the few that isn't. And even like what's problematic, what's her face on Twitter has now said that Hermione should have ended up with Harry and has been reduced to love interest in even the original author's fanfic.
Yeah.
Like it's a little painful.
Drama.
So, what are sidekicks in D&D designed to do? Well, it says right in the material that they're there to fill in one of a handful of slots to either be a second character for a player. This is ideally, they say, when you only have one or two players, or a player plays a sidekick as their only character, and this is someone who wants a simpler kind of game. That seems real simple to me, and I don't like that. The players jointly play the sidekick, or the DM plays the sidekick.
I don't like that one.
Let's talk real quick. It's not in the show notes, but let's talk real quick about the DMPC. Are you guys familiar with this concept?
Yep.
So, for those of you listening who aren't, the DMPC is the Dungeon Master player character. It's usually an insert for the Dungeon Master who is not actively playing and wants to be playing and keeps giving his one special character the biggest, best, coolest shit and often overshadowing the others. I think that DMPCs are problematic. We should avoid that if we can.
Yeah.
However, would you rather have the players controlling it then?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I feel like it's two different scenarios. Because I feel like if you're having a sidekick specific to a player character, then there's negotiation for who does what within its leveling up capabilities and all those things. I feel like the problem we're talking about right now is the character that a DM just makes to have in the game to make either your lives not great or better or broken. Like which I don't think is necessary. I feel like there's a good balance to be played. But I think it's two different issues.
So,
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just when I'm the DM, I'm looking at everything against the players. I don't want to add myself into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had a couple of times where I've had to do the DM PC and I end up just like having a conversation with myself in 3 different voices, which is fun.
but now you're just doing the same thing you do in the shower by yourself all the time. Yeah.
Let's not talk
Just in
about,
front of
let's not talk about what I do in the shower, okay? But you know, like it's neat, but it wears thin quickly, right?
Yeah.
I really struggle to find a balance for sidekicks, and I'm currently running 3 of them across 2 campaigns. You guys have a huge party on Sundays, and I've still inserted a sidekick into it for plot reasons.
Yes, it's a party full of pigeons, though.
Well, there is that.
It's just a bag of pigeons.
Yeah.
It's a basket and a bucket of pigeons.
Okay, sorry.
So,
For now.
for now. But I find that these sidekicks are incredibly useful for the one-on-one D&D that I play with Mieka, because it allows me to use challenge rating appropriate monsters.
Look, one-on-one, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea is that they're just NPCs, but during combat, you can choose what they do. Sometimes, and you can roll for them, but sometimes I will straight up say as the Dungeon Master, no, they wouldn't do that. Or they're going to cower in fear, this is too much for them.
Yeah.
Or they failed that save, so they're going to run away and not get to repeat the save on the next turn, because they're not the heroes of this story.
Yeah, it also keeps the player honest to the character as well, I find.
Yeah.
Not just taking advantage of having an extra body, right?
Just because you can doesn't mean that's what would or
Just
should
because you can
happen.
doesn't mean you should, yeah.
Exactly.
No, Dave.
So let's
Stop it.
I want to ask. So you guys have Tobalt in your campaign right now, and he is Megan's sidekick. He runs around as and you weren't expecting to get him as
No.
a sidekick.
I was not.
He just appeared one day as an antagonist who then kind of fell to his knees and apologized, and then tried to follow you around and became your squire almost.
Yeah. Bitch, I'm a queen.
So when he swapped sides and started to follow you around, we gave him sidekick levels. He levels when you guys do, but I always play him when it comes to role playing.
Mm-hmm.
You always play him and you get to roll for him when it comes to combat.
Combat, yeah.
And when it comes to exploration, he is entirely passive and will occasionally do an aid or a help, but he doesn't do the thing. There's no agency from him, and that's how I run all of my sidekicks.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good idea for Dungeon Masters to go gunning for the sidekick, to single them out, to break hearts on purpose?
I think that there's a good balance in what your players want out of their game and their campaign. So there are some people that want to have the heartbreak or want to have that storyline backline. So like our campaigns that we play with you, Adam, are a little bit more weird because we all build random backstories that end up coming together because we all come from different worlds that end up in the same world. So all of our backstories will usually be different. We just happen this time around, we do have characters that did come through the portals and into our world together. So there are 3 players at the table that do have a conjoined backstory. But then there's 2 or 3 of us that are completely outside of that backstory. So how do you engage that backstory? You throw in another like sidekick or a character that they can engage with and talk about their backstory to bring it to the table, which I think is kind of what I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was almost one of the reasons why that character kind of appeared, was to bring that backstory into the world.
He was there, honestly, he appeared to find out whether or not you would execute someone who had surrendered.
Ooh.
And then when you didn't, have a sidekick.
Here you go. Here's
Yeah.
a prize.
Because
For not being a murder hobo.
Because had the roles been reversed in that moment, he would have executed you. So you showed enough mercy to give him something new to think about.
Love that about him. But yeah, that's my take on it anyways.
Yeah, I think it's really dependent on what the players want. I've got some players who are more advanced than others and maybe need an extra thing to manage at the table. I would do that to keep engagement. But if I've got someone who's drowning to learn their spellcaster or something, not a chance, all right?
It's just one more thing to add to their plate to think about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really depends on who they are and if they're going to get anything out of it, right? If it's going to, be a net negative instead of a net positive,
Yeah.
why would I, right?
It would also kind of change like how you would navigate playing it, like how you're deciding whether or not the DM plays it or the player character plays it.
Yeah.
If you have a player at your table, like Dave, to your point, that is not necessarily as strong as just one more thing to manage, if you as the DM want more to manage, make a sidekick, you run it for them and give it as something to have like those downtime at the campfire conversations to start teaching them how to role play, right? It can be a teaching tool too.
It really can be.
Yeah.
The other thing that it mentions is that anything can become a sidekick. We're going to get into the mechanics about all this in a moment, but any creature CR half or lower can become a sidekick. And it specifically says that includes animals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If every single one of the players at the table, Dave, your pet lion, and
Murder face.
Murder face.
Yeah. and Casey's dinosaur mount or giant lizard mount.
Yep.
And
Agnes?
Agnes.
Yeah.
You guys are just wild.
We're great with names.
Charlie's little glowing light that follows him around. And
Oh, yes, light ball.
Light ball. Will-o-wisp.
that represents his soul. That's slowly getting dimmer.
Soul ball. Gotcha.
Yeah, got you. Great.
Would it cheapen it if every one of them started getting levels in Sidekick?
I don't
No.
think so.
No,
But would it drag the game down?
it would slow it down. Yeah, absolutely.
There's more to engage with, so I would imagine a natural, slow of pace would happen. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas about what you would do to make it a little bit more smooth to run combat or initiative or even exploration when you've got now 20 characters standing at the bottom of the cliff looking up going, well, who can climb up there? How do we not just bowl over the players?
I think that there's still some strategy to be had. So, if you do come up to, your cliff scenario where there's a cliff that has to be climbed, it does take a minute to realize who has what abilities. Because, I don't always remember that my character can climb well, let alone someone else's character kind of thing. So it still drives conversation at the table. But I think as a DM, if you wanted to control it a little bit, give them something to do. Give the sidekick something to do. For instance, we were traveling around with the caravan with a bunch of bags of pigeons in it. Be like, okay, well, I'm going to stay with the pigeons. You guys go do your thing, right? Give
them a task.
Give them a task.
Yeah.
Okay, Megan, you know better than Dave at this point. There's no part of any D&D game that I run where you are not escorting something.
Always escorting.
There are always NPCs to be protected.
Yeah.
You are the heroes. You are there to save people. Therefore, people must be in danger.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you get to run solo. But when it comes to a sidekick, I will often just put them on guard duty over here. They're going to take third watch so that you guys don't have to worry about it. There's a better chance that you will wake up to find a blood stain where they were sitting a moment before.
Yeah.
Because they're just a sidekick.
Yeah.
But by this point, we're 12, 14 episodes or sessions into playing with Tobolt, and he's almost become a member of the party.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like just fading to black and then you come back to find that he's been decapitated.
If you kill him, I will end you. I don't know.
You end him, I end you. Yeah.
There will be fight. There will be a puddle of blood under your chair.
But that's kind of my point, is that that's good because I had Taco Bell for dinner. That's...
See, I get emotionally attached to things, okay? I don't know.
But there's a point where the sidekick that was fun and useful for a couple of sessions becomes an emotional investment, and now it's a real issue to gun for them. And I feel like as a DM, if I do and they die, if you ever kill Boblin the Goblin or whatever beloved characters with the party, they're going to be mad at you, the DM. I distinctly remember there being 3 weeks where Dan refused to speak to me, and we were working together at the time, and he did not speak to me because I murdered his daughter and her unborn child.
Oh, wow.
In-game.
In-game.
In-game, yes, the character thing.
That was probably like the quietest 3 weeks of your life, eh?
Yeah. Just took a good snooze. But I mean, there are those characters like and players that are there for the sadness simulator. I'm here for sadness simulator.
Oh, I know.
Like, I just murder everyone I love. I will love it.
But I have people at my table that say they're there for that and then get legitimately upset when I do it. Charlie gets irrationally angry sometimes.
Yeah.
When he's like, I'm here for the heartbreak. And then I introduce heartbreak for someone else. And then he gets very fucking angry.
Yep.
And he's not the only one that has done that at my tables in the past. Everybody says they're up for it, but I find that Megan, you and Dan are the two that are really willing to like get put through a meat grinder.
Hey man, I'll cry at your table, but it's tears of this is such a good fucking story.
Whereas Dave won't even give me a backstory. He's like, I'm a Leonin. Barbarian.
He's coming for Murderface. That's what that says to me.
You leave Murderface out of this. He will murder your face. Read his name. Come on.
So let's talk for a second about. Okay, we've discussed why and how to use sidekicks a little bit. Let's talk about the mechanics here. You get a starting level of sidekick. There are 3 subclasses. They're warrior, spellcaster, and expert. That's it sums up kind of the 3 different paths you can take as a player character as well. So they've gotten really broad and very vague with what they can do, very simplistic. What you do is you choose any creature CR half or lower. I really recommend having something with intelligence, but you don't need to, right? It doesn't have to be sentient. It could be a frog that you were just giving levels of warrior to.
Yeah.
And then by level 18, you have a warrior frog that is murdering commoners left and right.
I love that.
You do give the first level at level 1, and you use whatever that creature's hit dice are moving forward. So if it is a frog, it's going to be a D4. And every time they level it, let's get another D4. But if you get something like, I'm trying to think of something that's actually CR half and not CR 1. I don't know the monster man off the top of my head like that. If you end up getting something like a commoner or whatnot with a D6, or if you can find a CR half creature with a D12 hit die, it's going to be beefy. Even as a spellcaster, it's going to be beefy in later level. One of the things that I try to do as well is to keep it at the same level as the party, even if they are level 12 and they run into a commoner who I'm going to give as a sidekick, and they're going to be able to cast spells and whatnot, but they're just really pathetic when you first meet them. By the time they get sidekick status, they will be the same level 12 as everybody else, because it really only feels like a third of a character sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting that feeling looking through them.
It's not a lot. Yeah.
When you level up, it doesn't matter how much of the group's recent adventures the sidekick experienced, they level up with them. So they don't get left in the dust. When it comes to hit points, it is the exact same hit dice plus con modifier that you're used to with your player characters. There is a helpful chart, much like all the classes are broken down. There's an overall chart about level progression, and then the sidekick subclasses. They each have a chart as well. So your proficiency modifier is going to go up. Bonifier. That's right. Your proficiency bonifier. That's a thing that I've said out loud.
Are you proficient in Bonifier?
You're goddamn right. So,
I need that on a mug.
I'm proficient in Bonifier.
So, one of the big things about these, and Dave walked in today and he's like, so there's a lot of ability score increases, aren't there? And the ASIs, there's a fuck ton of them.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's worth pointing out that they do not get feats. When you get an ASI as a sidekick, you don't have the option as a variant rule to take a feat. It's just an ASI.
No feats for them.
No feats. And that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot beyond that. Here's what Tasha has to say about sidekicks. My soon-to-be sidekick could learn a thing or two from all this. More material for Project Humble Canaan.
Oh, Tasha.
I think she's funny.
She's pretty funny.
I also think that she's low-key exactly what Terry wanted out of a goth girlfriend for the first 100 episodes of this podcast.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and he would have 100% been doing the irresistible dance up in a little go-go cage
Yeah, absolutely.
in her lair, wearing nothing but like a black leather Speedo.
Yeah.
And loving it. And he's loving it too.
Why wouldn't you?
He would think he's so seductive. He'd be like so proud of himself.
Yeah. Nobody else gets to be all the way up here.
I'm so special. Look at me go. Look at my tassels.
Is that what we're calling them now?
Well.
All right, so let's grab dice because we each took one of the subclasses, and let's run through. I grabbed this one this time.
Oh, this is a nice green sparkly dice.
I like it because it's easy to read.
Oh,
Well, yours is cocked. That's sitting between a 1
good.
and a
Let's get rid of
19.
that 1 then. Let me re-roll that. Perfect.
15. Well, you were going first,
I'm
Megan.
going last with a 10.
Yeah, I got a 13. So
some good neutral rolls.
Megan, which one did you get?
All right, so I got warrior, and it's basically as it sounds. So this is a martial class character that could be basically a soldier or a town guard you made friends with, or even a battle-trained beast, lion, or bear, or something along those lines. Because as we said, you could pick an animal or have an animal as a thing, as a warrior, if you wanted to, which is pretty badass.
I like the idea of like your pet warrior dog.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah.
Like your war wolf.
I feel like this overshadows Animal Companion in a lot of
100%
ways.
it does.
Except that your sidekick doesn't automatically know how to do tricks.
Yeah.
That's the thing that the new Animal Companions get that warrior doesn't get.
Yeah.
Can your warrior turn tricks, Megan?
No.
Okay.
I mean, can mine? I mean, we can talk about that. I would love to see if Tobo could turn some tricks.
He would be an arcane trickster.
Oh my god. There are so many opportunities here.
Nope, just the one.
That's true.
Anyways, take us through warrior.
All right. Well, I feel to build So I feel that you would build one of these if you wanted to in your campaign to give a bit of a martial boost, or perhaps give one to a squishy team of magical characters, or even just a low-level party that needs a little bit of a boost in the fighting. And or if you're going into war, it'd be nice to have someone who has a war background or war knowledge, and you're a team that doesn't. Sometimes a sidekick like this can be helpful in those areas. So, and one of the things I immediately thought of when I thought of the warrior companion was, unfortunately, in L5R, which I think I say I don't want to talk about that a lot, but
No, I love it because it's something I know nothing about.
all right.
Yeah.
So there are characters in the game called Yojimbos, which are basically a fighting character that is built to protect your
Are they
squishy clerical
rabbits?
character. What?
Usagi Yojimbo?
Yeah,
No, you don't get the rabbit. That's a Ninja Turtles thing.
I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. Do you not remember that, Dave? Or-
Nope.
Usagi Yojimbo?
Yeah, that's his fucking... And he's like the most honorable rabbit warrior.
That sounds fair. That sounds about right. I mean, like, what you're saying sounds right.
That's all I'm going to think about now for the warrior subclass.
Yeah,
Is
Oh, I've had
A Haragon.
I am a warrior. The song started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that how it goes, Dave?
No.
I hate it. But anyways, in L5R, it's an actual class that you build, whereas I feel like in D&D, this is kind of built, that can be built as a warrior, like, sidekick into the game. So if you are a squishy, like, warlock or a squishy wizard, it would be nice to have a warrior that is there built to protect you, shall we say.
A bodyguard.
A bodyguard, yeah. But I do feel like in D&D, it can also be used to progress a story, or create political alliances, or just be someone to use as an extra fighting character. Maybe even used to train another one of your fighter characters. Maybe it's somebody where your fighter character looked up to, something along those lines. I feel like there's a lot of storyline capabilities to use warriors. The political intrigue part is one that I like, and that's one of the things that we're almost kind of touching on in our campaign with Tobalt, because he does come from my old family line, which we're trying to restore our honor for. So it's kind of like
There have been a couple of twists and turns on that.
yeah, so there's a little bit of a political intrigue part. Not only that, but now there's like an emotional if he dies, I die kind of feeling. So I feel like warriors don't just have to be meat shields. They can be used for other things, is what I'm trying
Like
to
turning
get at.
tricks.
Turning tricks. Trickster, warrior. I love it. When it comes to role-playing one of these, I don't see them being the controversial, like, story driver. They're not going to be the one that gets you into trouble. They're not going to be the one that starts a political conversation, unless, again, that's what you're trying to do. I do feel like they are more of your support, or just there to give anecdotes, or just generally be an assist with combat and developing war strategy, again, for like what your team needs. So if you're going to role play one of these, they don't necessarily have to be intelligent, to your point. They could just be a thing that exists that assists, right? And I feel like the abilities they're given do make me feel like they are just there for being a meat shield, but again, you can do whatever you want with them, I feel. So let's get into those. So their bonus proficiencies are they choose a saving throw of either strength, dex, or con. Makes sense. And 2 skills from either acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and one of those 2.
Not survival, hey?
Yes, and survival.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, because I'm in my head, because you're like, oh, it's political intrigue. And I'm like, no, he's a barbarian. He's a meat shield.
No.
And so I just assumed
It was
survival.
it's the intimidation, the perception, and the survival, and a little bit of nature, if you wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah.
That makes me think that they could be a forager or like a
ranger.
a ranger kind of thing, right? Because basically they are proficient in all armor types, and if they're humanoid and not just a war bear, they do get proficiency in shields and all other simple and martial weapons.
I'm going to throw this out there. I've said this in the past, but it's been a while. If you're going to have an animal companion of any kind, it needs to be a primate because you get all of the animal plus opposable thumbs.
So would that count as a humanoid?
Not a humanoid, still a beast,
Yeah.
but I would absolutely let them wield a sword
Yeah.
and wear rudimentary armor.
Just a giant mace. Yeah.
I keep thinking about is it the mandrill that's outside of the hut in Ace Ventura 2?
Yep.
Oh my god.
That's like sleeping? Like that's...
Did you learn nothing from Planet of the Apes?
None of us did. Look
learned,
at the world.
I learned that if we don't pay attention, they will become Abraham Lincoln.
Fair. You know what? That's a fair assumption. Yeah. I'm glad that that's the lesson you learned from that.
Because apparently I'm only going to reference a Tim Burton fucking abomination.
Oh, my Atlanta. You would.
I
You
would,
absolutely
yeah.
All right, let's dig into some other options. What you get is you level them up. So at level 1, you gain your martial role. You get to choose between either being an attacker or defense. Seems pretty simple, but
Is that like a fighting style or is it its own separate thing?
it's kind of like a fighting style, but it doesn't give you the same amount of awesomeness as a fighting style does, and it only really comes into into use once at level 1. You choose the path, you get a thing, and that's it. So if you're an attacker, you get +2 to your attacks. If you're a defender, you get a reaction to impose disadvantages on the attack roll of a creature within 5 feet that isn't you as a person.
Holy shit. That's real powerful.
At level 1.
It can be.
It can be, but it never increases. It just, you get it, and you choose one way or the other, and that's it.
Yeah, but disadvantage is so powerful. I'm thinking about all of everything is a D8 or D6. I mean, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 13 classes that are above that.
Yeah.
Everybody's squishy.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's squishy. If you got a warrior imposing disadvantage because he's going to go shoulder to shoulder with you in combat,
Yes.
suddenly the rogue is going to live long because rogues fucking need to live longer.
Yeah.
Right, but rogues and monks and fighty warlocks and shit will last longer. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like it's necessarily too overpowered in my mind, but like it's...
As a DM, though, I have to prepare for that.
Yeah.
More
Right,
minions.
yes.
And are you using flanking rules?
Yeah.
That's a big question as well.
Sure.
Yeah. But again, that's the only time it really comes into play. You basically decide whether you have someone who carries a shield or someone who carries a sword. And that's basically how that goes. Because at 2nd level, they get a second wind, which of course, as we have discussed a few times, is just a bonus action, and you can regain 1d10 plus your level, regained on a short or long rest. At 3rd level, you get your improved critical, which is a critical on a 19 or 20, which I think is pretty good.
That's a mechanic that I was really missing from 3.5.
Then play a champion fighter.
Sure, but...
Or just play sidekick.
Well, yes, but you still get the keen weapons and stuff like that. Like, you could really open up your crit range.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a character that would crit on a 14 or above.
Yeah, it was like you get some
In
ridiculous
5th edition?
No, 3.5.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's all 3.5.
I was like, my God.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Get out.
Well, it didn't have bounded accuracy, so I mean, the AC on creatures was like 43 as
Yeah.
well, so I mean, you needed to
Have a
hit
thing.
those, Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, at 4th level, you start getting your ability score improvements. You get them at 4th, 8th, 12th, 14th, 16th, and 19th level.
So more often than a player character.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned, you do not get to choose to have feats.
No feats.
No feats.
We are kink shaming on this episode.
Absolutely no feats.
No feats.
Yeah.
They've been defeated already.
Defeated.
Quentin Tarantino, get out.
You're unwanted. All right, at 6th level, you get your extra attack. This does actually increase to 3 attacks at level 13.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. At 7th level, you get your battle readiness, which is basically advantage on initiative rolls, which I think is pretty freaking useful if you are playing a protector of a squishy character and you get to have your initiative roll first.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. At 10th level, you get improved defense, so your armor class increases by 1. At 11th level, you get Indomitable, which is a reroll on a saving throw that they fail, but you must use the new roll.
Will you remember that you have it?
No.
No.
I will write it on my sheet, on
Yeah,
my
right
forehead.
at the top in big
I'll get
letters.
it tattooed on my chest, and I still won't remember.
Well, that wouldn't help any. Because you don't, like...
Maybe you don't.
I mean, I don't think you understand how many people look at my chest.
Megan, Indomitable, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You're screaming Indomitable right now. Oh my god, I hate it so much.
I'm uncomfortable.
I'm uncomfortable and I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh yeah, after level 11, pretty much all you really get is your ability score improvements and then your extra attack, your Indomitable, and your second win increase over time. So
The other thing to point out is that the proficiency bonuses on these guys looks like they increase at about the same speed as the player characters. So you do end up with a +6 to your proficiency bonus. So.
yeah, so getting that advantage on your
bona fide.
your bona fide stop it is very beneficial for anyone involved.
Uh-huh.
I am still uncomfortable.
Megan, you're Indomitable. I'm gonna get Indomitable to put on my chest now.
We're going to get a t-shirt made for you. And Dan's going to think it's about him.
And what's it going to say and where? Yeah.
I love this for me. Anyways, yeah, that's it. That's them.
Okay, so I got a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a quest off the top of your head that really stands out for these guys?
For a warrior?
For a warrior.
Yeah. I feel like these would be the kind of, I see them as a quest giver giving them a warrior to help them cross a path somewhere or cross the desert or to be a guide almost. Like we've used sidekicks before or NPCs as guides.
Yeah.
I could see that being an excellent side quest for a warrior is to help a party and be the escorted instead of the escortee.
Well, okay, here's a question. Do you like the idea of a sidekick that comes and goes? Only going to be here for 3 levels to get across the desert and then bids adieu?
Love a good part-time questy/sidekick.
I like them when they kind of tag in and out.
Yeah.
I bet you do.
Yeah, I do.
So
Indomitable.
they tag in and out with a wet thud.
Better than... Yeah, never mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, say it.
Better than a dry wump.
Nobody loves a dry wump.
No.
Well, if you dry wump long enough, it becomes a wet thud, right?
It's an undetermined amount of time.
Only if you got a bona fire.
So much. Talk to me more about your bona fide.
Speaking of bona fires, okay, so you have attack and you have defense, right? Those are the 2 things that you can...
That's kind of how you start, in my mind, the role-playing aspect of that character.
And I think that that's going to be a good indication of what their tactics are in combat.
Yeah.
Mechanically speaking, and this is not entirely accurate, but for the purpose of podcast, because we're not going to bust out calculators and spreadsheets for this, you can assume that disadvantage is a -4 on an attack or on a d20 roll, and advantage is a +4.
Mm-hmm.
That's not quite accurate, but over the span of a campaign it should roughly work out to that. Attacker gets a +2 to hit, defender gets a -4 that they would impose on those kind of attacks. They would have to be, I mean, does attacker get it on all attacks, ranged attacks as well? Because defender only gets it on melee that's adjacent.
It just says attacks.
Okay, so yeah, so it would work on any
ranger.
sort of bows or crossbows or anything.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I do this with Tobalt all the time. Is I give him ranged weapons and let him shoot from a distance.
Yep.
Keeps him out of danger, so he'll live longer. Also, he can't roll to hit worth shit.
Yep.
So that's
Megan's bad.
Megan's dice hater.
Hey, we figured that out for the most part.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just trade dice, guys. That's a secret.
Yeah, it works.
So do you have any insights about the difference between attacker and defender when it comes to combat?
I personally enjoy the idea of the defender more.
Mm-hmm.
Only because I think that it's a more in-depth character to role play with, because they're going to have a reason to stay close to you. They're going to have a reason to like a job or a purpose. Whereas I find like being an attacker is just like, that's cool. You can attack. Mechanically, it's nice to have that extra bonus attack, especially if you don't have a lot of close-ranged fighters. But I like the idea of a protector. That's just a me thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like there's more room to have fun role-playing with a defender.
Yeah.
Because your attackers are going to go in and attack, where defending can be more...
And I'm going to say this too. A sidekick can carry health potions.
Yeah, and items and things, yeah.
Yeah, and that is a great use for them, because if they end up dashing in or burning an action to help feed someone else a potion or whatnot, that doesn't hurt as bad as the level 8 fighter wasting a whole turn doing that. Or, a monk giving up all those bonus actions and shit, right? So.
Yeah. And it doesn't, I also have to say this, it doesn't have to be you as their, like, assigned sidekick owner that it protects.
No.
Like, it can go off and protect it. Like, I've said many times to my sidekick, I need you to go and make sure that person is okay.
Yeah.
And then they fuck off and they do what I tell them to do, right? So I feel like that is important to state. I do feel like mechanically, it's not built to level up as a defender, because you're getting a second attacks, you're getting second wins, you're getting all these things that in my mind are building a fighter, not necessarily a extra like bash attack or a push attack or like benefits to grapple or
there's
anything
no
like that.
reason why they can't grapple or shove as well, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but you're not going to get any increased bonuses for that.
That's
You're going to
true.
have to build your character. You're going to have to use your ability increase scores to build yourself a really good defender. Whereas I think the stats are built to make a really good fighter, and then you can just add your ability scores to make an even better fighter.
That's
Does
fair.
that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, normally we ask about exploration or role-playing, but I'd like to ask instead, which are the 2 skills that you would pick for a warrior? What's the list again, Megan?
The list for warrior for skills is going to be animal handling, acrobatics, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and survival.
Which ones do you choose for a sidekick, for a warrior? Any insights, guys?
I kind of like the idea of having an animal as your sidekick and giving it animal handling.
I can talk to other animals.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. I enjoy. I would do intimidation, and probably survival.
Yeah, I'm big on the animal handling and survival, because I know that my players won't take them.
Yep.
Right? And so these are more skills I can add to the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Because the player characters aren't going to come to the table with that shit. Almost every player character I've ever met has got something into intimidation.
And perception.
And perception. Although perception is going to allow them to be that, everybody go, look out into the horizon, and what do you see? And everyone rolls like shit, but the sidekick sees it, and now we get to know what Legolas's elf eyes see, and that saves us from whatever random encounter.
Also, Tobalt is an elf, so yeah.
Yeah.
What do your elf eyes see?
Yeah. The animal with animal handling makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, animals instinctively read body language. That makes perfect fucking sense to me.
Would you have them roll animal handling when they're trying to communicate with another human at the table? Because humans count as, or like humanoids count as animals.
No. That's still intimidation.
Fair.
Who rolled next highest? That's
you.
That was me. All right, so Spellcaster. Spellcaster is a sidekick that casts spells. I don't want...
Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to shock
What?
you guys. So we're going to rip that Band-Aid off quickly.
Oh.
However, it lists the different kinds of spellcasters they can be. They can be a mage, which would make them a wizard that uses their intelligence modifier to cast spells, or a healer, which allows them to be a cleric or a druid, and they would use wisdom, or a prodigy, which would allow them to be a bard or a warlock, so they'd use charisma. You cannot be a sorcerer. Hard stop.
Yeah.
There is no sorcerer archetype, which seems bizarre to me because I love the idea of the sidekick that just all of a sudden one day manifests powers.
Oh my god, look at what I have. All
Yeah.
these magical capabilities.
And now I need to tag along with the party.
There's other ways you can work that into their story, though.
There are other ways, but like it's just weird that wasn't one of them. And also the artificer didn't get a shout out for the intelligence. I feel it.
I think it's-
I was
I
doing my artificer dirty.
I almost feel like if you're comparing the warrior to the this magical spellcaster that's casting spells,
Yes.
that they're actually making callouts to the archetypes, whereas like the warrior did not. It just said you can either defend or you can attack. I'm surprised it didn't say you can be a healer or like what. I'm surprised they actually did a call out.
I feel like the artificer has too much going on to make them a sidekick.
I think that's true.
Like, if you were to try to flesh that out, they would just be getting too much time in the spotlight.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
When it comes to a spellcaster, you have a handful of skills that you could be proficient in. They are Arcana, obviously, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, Performance, Persuasion, and Religion. And that really runs the fucking gamut.
Yeah.
On all of that. And I feel like that's just because you can be intelligence, wisdom, or charisma based.
Yeah.
You do get the spellcasting trait when you become a spellcaster. I know, sit down, this is getting wacky.
Crazy.
Yeah. But you also get a certain amount of spell slots and spells known. The spells known that you are given at first level, you can choose from whatever the spell list is. For if you are a mage, you can choose from the wizard's spell list. And that's why they break it out like that. But it has recommendations. So think about this for a sidekick. For a mage. Mage Hand, Ray of Frost, and Thunderwave.
Okay.
Wow.
That's first level.
I'm going to write that down for a future character. That seems like a good spread.
Yeah.
For healer, you get Cure Wounds, Guidance, and Sacred Flame.
Okay.
Interesting.
Doesn't really fit the druid, but okay, that's clearly a cleric.
Yes.
There's no shillelagh in there, right?
No.
Well, I mean, you could roleplay the guidance side to be a little
You could.
fluffy if you wanted to.
Prodigy is Eldritch Blast, Healing Word, and Light.
Oh, so they get the healing word.
Yeah, because bards.
Yeah.
Right, the bard archetype.
I guess so.
Honestly, I was sitting here thinking that's a little light, but I think that's perfect for a sidekick.
Yeah, and at first level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there is a big-ass chart with your spell progression. You only ever get up to 5th level spells, and it progresses very similarly to the Ranger and the Paladin, as far as how many spells you know and how often you get to learn new ones.
Okay.
To be fair, if you can cast 6th level spells or higher, you are the main character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
main
fair.
character energy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You do get to know a number of cantrips as well. You start off with 2. At most, you will get 4. You will know 4 of them by level 10. You never get more cantrips beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you get your bonus proficiencies and your spellcasting at level 1 because otherwise you wouldn't be a spellcaster.
Fair.
And then it's just spells and shit for 2nd and 3rd level. 4th level is the ability score improvement, and again at 8th, 12th, 16th, and 18th.
Mm-hmm.
You get potent cantrips at level 6, and potent cantrips allows you to add your spellcasting ability modifier to damage with a cantrip.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is okay. Like, that's sure. You, at 14th level, get empowered spells. So you choose one school of magic, and whenever the sidekick casts a spell of that school, when it expends a spell slot, so scrolls and wands and shit don't count.
Or cantrips.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
They can add their spellcasting ability modifier to the spell's damage roll, or healing roll, if any. So just more of the same, but for bigger, better spells. You'll notice you're not getting anything for your utility spells, right? Silence isn't getting a boost to this, right? And at 20th level, you get focused casting. Taking damage can't break the sidekick's concentration on a spell.
That's handy.
That's pretty fucking handy. But you have to be level
20.
20 to get there.
Yeah. How often do you do that?
Yeah, but think about when it cuts down to your big bad evil guy and they drop magical darkness, for example, because they will have access to that, right?
Yeah.
That's a low enough spell. No matter what happens, as long as they're conscious, they'll still be able to keep that darkness up.
Love it.
So that could swing the tide in a big boss battle.
Mm.
So how do you guys feel about these? Do you like them? I mean, and that's it. That's all you get for Spellcaster. It's all based on the spells you're choosing, just as if you were a weaker mage.
I don't hate it.
I like it. Okay, I sat down and ended up making I think I've talked about him before, a character in our Dungeon Mad Mage Yek, who's a goblin cleric. And I essentially went through and I made a cleric and then absolutely neutered it and gave it like half of what it should have in very particular
Did you
spells.
castrate a goblin?
Essentially.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of their healer in the background. He doesn't do much, but he can shoot a bow and he can heal when they need it, right? That took me so long to flesh that out, but this was before I was even aware of sidekick rules. It might have been before Tasha's came out even, but it really would have streamlined that side of it, right? Because I know there's everybody out there is trying to make, this guy to fill in the gap here, fill in the gap there, do these things.
That's the other thing to keep in mind. The number of times that I've looked at a party where we're at a session 0 and everyone's going around going, rogue? Yes, okay, battle master over here, and you're going to be this eldritch whatever. Do we have a healer? Who's going to be the healer? We don't need that conversation anymore.
Yeah, because we have these mechanics now that you can throw in there that are helpful.
Yeah, and the fact that you get to pick the spells too, like it's not just a preset list.
No, it has the recommendations, and they're fine, although a little wonky. Healing Word and Eldritch Blast on the same list felt strange to me.
That was a little bit of an ick for me, but
Yeah.
like I feel like as they're leveling, you can almost like guide it in one direction or the other.
Well, as a DM, I mean, the way they gain access to them, yeah, you can mix that up pretty easily.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't get everything. Maybe they are only able to learn from particular schools.
Yeah, and I would really do it that way. So that was my big quest thing, because there are kind of 3 different options for this. My big idea for the quest was that these are people that you might hire. These might be hireling. You know you're going on a adventure or on a quest or whatnot. You need someone that can cast blank. So you would go to the temple, or you would go to the mage school, or you would go to the local bardic college, and you would say, okay, we need you. We were going to hire you, so for gold per day. And there are rules in, I want to say the player's handbook, but it might be the DMG, for how to hire people, how much it costs. So for hirelings. I feel like this sidekick could very easily not be one that, you happened upon or comes from a backstory, but someone that you seek out and say, we want to hire you for this specific set of skills.
Yeah.
Because we are a monk, a barbarian, and a fighter going to fight a lich. Help.
I feel like that we're being personally attacked right now.
You are. Yeah.
Story of my life.
We have a cleric who actually heals this time around.
That's true. Dan is very thankful.
Yeah.
Well, sure. He gets healed last, though, every time, which makes me laugh.
Good.
For combat for these guys, it's hard to come up with something specific, except normally your spellcaster sits in the back row because they're squishy as all fuck.
Yep.
You can have D10 or D12 hit dice on these guys.
Because of their monster base, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Which means they can be right up there and doing those melee spells are the ones where they're right in combat with people.
Yeah.
Is this how you get a dog casting fireball?
I was going to say a cat. I think it's more on brand for a cat.
Sure.
But yes, that's... I like the idea of a dog casting what Mordenkainen's Magnificent Hound. Where'd my sidekick go? Oh, he's humping in the corner again.
Oh, God.
So,
no.
Kevin, no.
Well, there are a lot of low-level summon spells as well. So think about that. You could have an animal summoning other animals.
Yeah.
An animal druid summoning humanoids.
And everyone's going to sit there and be like, is he in wild shape? And you'd be like, we think so. Like, he never comes out of it.
We don't ask.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a way to make this just cyclical so that just casting more and more and
Yeah.
more
Absolutely.
and more. Yeah.
So the skills that I read out, they do seem to be specifically geared towards the 3 different kinds. They are Arcana and History. Those are clearly like Mage, Wizard, right? You have Insight and Medicine and Religion. Those are your healer. And then for your Bard and Warlock, you get Investigation, Performance, and Persuasion. So depending on which one, the Mage, the Healer, or the Prodigy, it's going to tell you which to get. But you can mix and match, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think so.
Would you guys, as DMs, stick hard and fast to the list of skills?
I never stick hard and fast.
That's a damn lie. I've seen you try to get up off a leather couch.
On a hot day, yeah.
Ew, David.
So,
Ugh.
depending on the backstory of the sidekick that you're adding, though, I'm totally gonna fuck with these lists, these skill lists.
Yeah.
Oh, clearly.
I think
Yeah.
that's fair to say.
Look,
Not
this is all
necessarily the rest,
inspiration.
but,
It's
yeah.
not. It's not.
It's more
hard
of a
facts.
guideline, really.
Yeah, I'm really using sidekicks as rules as intended, not as written.
The rules are meant to be broken.
Okay, well, speaking of, you were the expert, Dave. Take it through the expert.
Okay, so the expert is just that. He's an expert, the master of trade, like his trade. He good.
He good.
He good.
He good at speak.
He good at stuff. They're going to be your journeyman. When I say a master of their trade, these guys could very much be tradesmen. These could be your smiths, armor smiths, tool smiths.
Is this where your artificer lies?
No,
No,
Not
doesn't
entirely.
quite.
there's no real magic to these guys.
Okay.
But again, it could just be about any profession you could imagine. This could be a professional criminal. This could be a healer as well. Maybe they're doing medicine checks, that kind of thing, right? The prerequisite for the expert, though, is that they have to be able to speak a language, okay?
In order to be an expert, you have to have the intelligence to
You
do
have
it.
to be able to speak a language, so you're not going to get an expert dog,
Okay.
okay? You're not going to get...
I think that's a good rule to have.
Well, does that include Kenkus then?
Well, I put a note to be inclusive with this kind of thing, just because they said they have to be able to speak. I feel like you can wiggle room that a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
right? Like for instance, I saw it as a monk that took a vow of silence. They're still going to be able to communicate intelligently, be inclusive.
I would let a gorilla. They have sign language.
I was going to say sign language is an option, I think.
I think you would have to really customize it though.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But
Yeah.
I love the idea of the gorilla that pushes everyone out of the way and pulls out thieves' tools.
Oh my god, could you imagine? I would love that.
I mean, their role to me is to fill in the party gap, right? When you've got a particular quest that these guys are going, that your party is going on, maybe they don't necessarily have the knowledge amongst them. You go and you hire the expert, okay?
Sure.
It just makes sense. This is what they are supposed to be there for. To me, an expert is going to be a bit of a know-it-all. They're probably going to, have a little turn their nose at things and, oh, you don't know this? Oh, and be a little pompous and be kind of annoying. That's what I think of when I think of like these experts. Didn't know it all.
It's funny. The expert in my head, the first time I read this, was a demolitions guy from Atlantis.
Okay, yeah.
Oddly specific, but I'm with
like
you.
that's where my brain went first. Yeah.
Long and the short of it, though, the expert is going to be, in my opinion, a knowledgeable guide. Okay, they're going to be able to help you fill in this gap that you guys don't have. Whereas the other sidekicks do that, I think the experts really focus on those mechanics. Even if you're a party of all fighters, there's probably going to be some spellcasting in there. Even if you're a party of all spellcasters, maybe you have a warrior being, or maybe you have a warlock being a warrior. But if you don't have a skill monkey, like if you don't have a rogue, you're missing out on quite a bit.
Can you imagine having a table without a rogue?
What, Charlie's not playing this week?
What a weird thought.
It's hard to not have those basic skills sometimes, right? When you're all fumbling around to pick the lock that you should have gotten 10 minutes ago. Like, my God, where's the rogue when you need it, right? But that's what these guys are. These guys are your rogue. At first level, they get their expert bonus proficiencies, which means they get proficiency in either Dex Intelligence or Constitution saving throws. They also gain proficiency in 5 skills.
Oh.
That's just, you get
Any
to choose.
five.
Any five.
Okay.
You gain proficiency in those.
Expert, shall we say.
Yeah, no kidding.
They also get proficiency in light armor, simple weapons, and 2 tools of your choice.
I can choose any 2 tools.
Yes. Which 2 would you choose?
Well, one's going to make a wet thud.
Yeah?
And the other's going to make a dry whump.
Yeah. I believe that.
How bona fide of you.
The bona fide. That's what he's going to be.
That does not get less gross.
That's his name, though.
Yeah, we need an expert. We seek the bona fide.
Just listen for the wet thud. You'll find him in the West.
He is indomitable.
It's all coming together.
I hate it and I love it. Also, at first level, these guys get helpful, which allows them to use the help action as a bonus action.
Nice.
Nice.
All right.
That's helpful.
I get it.
Literally helpful.
Are you guys familiar with the help action?
I
I
am.
was not. I had to look it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't ask
Well-
for help. I'm
well,
bad at it.
I want you to break it down for the people at home, and I do mean, we can break it down.
Essentially, you're lending
You
aid.
wrap this.
Essentially, you're lending aid
Please stop rapping.
No!
to another creature whose role wasn't made.
He's the voice of a generation.
They get advantage on their next ability.
Yeah. All right, come on, Dave. Bring us home.
These experts are going to be good at agility.
You know what? You get an inspiration die.
If the task is done
Oh, shit. He's still
before
going.
your next turn, that's it. That's it. That's all I got.
Yeah, you're leaving me hanging
All
here.
right, that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, high and dry.
I hate it so
Anyways, the helpful action, you are lending aid to another creature. They gain advantage on their next ability check to complete that particular task, but it has to be done before the end of your next turn. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a time limit on it.
All right, Maggie, come on.
I've caught up. Here we go.
They can also aid a friendly creature in attacking. The creature has to be within 5 feet of you, and you do some sort of distraction to impose advantage, essentially. Okay.
Sure.
So you get that as a bonus action. So if you're within 5 feet, you can make the distraction and so on. It's beneficial. At second level, you get cunning action, which as a bonus action, you get to hide, dash, or disengage Again, this is rogue written all over it.
It's interesting.
Skills and actions as bonuses.
It's
Yeah.
interesting though, because with the aid action and the advantage or the help action and all the stuff that you're doing there, it's beneficial to put this expert beside a rogue, right? Who's going to be doing a lot of the skill stuff and is going to want advantage on a lot of shit. Whereas it's got better synergy than a spellcaster beside a wizard or a warrior beside a barbarian.
Yeah.
It can. They really shine at later levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. At third level, they get expertise, which is just you get 2 skills that you're proficient in, and you double their proficiency. Fourth level, you get your ASI. Fifth level, you don't get anything. Sixth, you get coordinated strike. When you're using your helpful action to aid an ally in an attack, the opponent can be up to 30 feet away from the sidekick. Okay, so you can distract from even further away. This also deals an extra 2d6 damage the next time the sidekick hits with an attack before the end of that round. Okay, so it makes up for your sneak attack. But I really like the idea that you can be helpful from 30 feet away. You don't need to get close to have an effect on what's going on. You can be over here working on a thing and still have that bonus to what's going on in combat.
Yeah.
At 7th level, you get evasion, so instead of taking half damage on a successful dex check, you would take no damage at all. 8th level is ASI, 9th level is nothing, 10th level you get the ability score increase. At 11th level you get inspiring help. When you're taking the help action, the ally who was helped gains 1d6 to the d20 roll. Okay? If it's an attack, the 1d6 can either be used on the attack roll or the damage roll, you can choose.
Well, that's smart.
Okay?
That is really helpful.
Yeah, especially if you're like imposing advantage and then
Yeah.
adding a d6 to it as well.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
You make it happen.
12th level, you get the ASI. 13th level is nothing. 14th level, you get reliable talent, which essentially, if you roll 9 or less, you just assume it's a 10.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot be less.
That
than
is the bane of my fucking existence with rogues, so I fucking hate that, but okay.
At 15th level, you get expertise again,
Yeah.
so you get 2 more skills that you can double the proficiency modifier of.
Grace of
And up around there, you've got +5 or +6, so that's going to be a +10 or +12.
Oh yeah, it gets out of hand quickly. Because then again, at 16th level, you get another ASI. 17th level is nothing. 18th level, you get Sharp Mind, which just, you gain proficiency for either Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma saves.
Yep.
Okay. 19th level, you get ASI, and at 20th level, that 1d6 that you got to aid with the Inspiring Help is now 2d6. So you are imposing advantage and a 2d6 bonus.
Woof.
Right?
That's crazy.
That gets out of hand fast, right?
Do you have any insights about what kind of a quest that you would bring to the table with one of these guys?
When I was looking at these guys, I thought that instead of just sticking to the rogue archetype of these, I thought that maybe these guys would be more your guy in the chair, right? They're going to be, I was thinking about Indiana Jones going into the Valley of the Crescent Moon, and he's got all of the things. These experts are going to be the guys that are interpreting the book and doing the translations for you and making sure you get things right. They get the information. When your PCs are not going to be able to read this particular text, or they get the book and they have no idea what to do with it, these are where your experts are. They're not,
your archaeologists.
They very much, they're your librarians. They're your information seeker. Like you seek them out to gain the information, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm going through my list that I gave earlier of all the famous sidekicks from pop culture. Most of them are an expert of some sort. Like they're very, very good at one or two things. And it's not necessarily fighting, right? And I mean, as much as you can make an argument that Ford Prefect or Doc Brown or
Marcus from Indiana Jones.
well, no. I was thinking those two specifically, or Genie from Aladdin. They're spellcasters.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, like if I'm going to make Doc Brown, I'll probably do a spellcaster.
This is
with
Penny and Brain from Inspector Gadget.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most of them are. Even like Robin's a combatant, but he's look at me over here in the bright colors. Like he's very much an expert.
A distracting character.
And I think a lot of your typical sidekick is already an expert archetype from Tasha's.
Yeah, the idea of having a sidekick is they're focusing on one thing.
Yeah.
They called it an expert, but I mean the warrior is just a combat expert. The spellcaster is just a spell expert, right?
Yeah. So do you have any insights about combat with these guys?
I think that they have the potential to have a really hard strike in the first round with the distraction and essentially a sneak attack.
Yeah.
Doing extra damage and allowing the PC to hit a little harder as well, or at least more consistently. Like they really are a benefit to have at a distance, at specifically less than 30 feet.
Sure.
Right? Like they really shine in that manner.
That range.
Yeah, and they can. I like the idea of them being able to like hit and run as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that these guys are the more mobile side of it. Your warriors are going to get up close. Your spellcasters are going to sit back.
Although they don't have to now because you have massive hit dice.
Oh, they absolutely don't have to. But your expert's going to be everything in the middle. They're going to essentially fill the gaps. Like that's really what it comes down to with these guys.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm assuming that when it comes to the skills specifically, you're just looking at what the party needs or what the role is. More so than any of the other two of the three. Like this is the one that I would add a mechanic to, and this is what I did for Tobalt, as well as for the two that Miyako run.
Yeah.
Not only do I pick a race, or as we call it now, a lineage, for them to have, I also pick a background.
Yep.
Because that really ties them into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a background like that inspires you for your subclass, your sidekick?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways you could go with it. I mean,
The expert's so versatile.
it is. Like Urchin stands out to me.
Hermit, Outlander, like
Acolyte even. Like
Acolyte really fits as the healer in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but you're going to be an expert at that particular, like you can be an expert at anything.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely right. You don't have to have magic in order to heal because you have the medicine skill, right? You don't have to have magic in order to worship a god because that's the religion skill, right?
I like the idea of having these guys. Maybe your campaign doesn't have magic yet, and these guys kind of fill in that non-magical gap that's missing, right? They like just an idea.
Is there a sidekick archetype that's missing in your opinion? We got these three. It's usually these three when we talk about sidekicks in D&D, like through the different editions. Is there one that's missing? Because we're clearly missing some character stuff here. For example, there's no great archetype for monks or smiting for a paladin or artificers, right? Sorcerer is clearly left off the list. Rangers don't really have a great, like there's no sidekick with an animal companion or the ability to wild shape.
Yeah.
Right?
But I feel like they would almost do that not to outshadow, again, to our point, some of the other like classes that do get pets and like actual psychics built into their character, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
It just really does feel like the warrior is a fighter and the expert is a rogue.
Yeah.
It does, but I mean, when you break down every game with the class set, you get thief, warrior, spellcaster.
Yeah.
And that's what we got here. Like they check the boxes.
Yeah, there's almost one for each one of the pillars, right? Like everything always breaks down into threes, right? We got combat and exploration, and then, well, I mean, I guess spellcaster is versatile too. I guess spellcaster is more versatile than I'm giving it credit for because it depends on the spells you choose.
Yeah, it depends on the path you choose and then the spells that you choose for that path. Makes it very customizable.
Okay, so just to wrap up this episode, I wanted to ask you guys, mechanically, do you like sidekicks? Do they do everything you want them to? Or is there something missing?
I think they do enough.
I think there's enough other stuff with animal companions that it's already covered. Familiars, like that side's already covered. This opens it up. Honestly, if I was going to use sidekicks, I probably would always make them an intelligent creature. I wouldn't use
Animals?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
I feel like that's better used in a different way.
Honestly, if I had a player's handbook Beastmaster, because it's so fucking weak. Their animal companion there sucks, I would just make it.
Sure, you could make an argument for a druid too. Like, it makes sense. I could see it. But as a generalization, I would probably just stick to the basic on this one and use it as a gimmick, not a long-term thing that I have to manage. Because if you do it for one player, you got to do it for them all.
Yeah.
And it just gets out of hand.
I don't believe that for a second.
No,
I know that you don't believe that for a second.
The party gets one.
No, and great. I think my guys would be a little butthurt if I was giving special attention to someone. But
fair enough. But I also feel like this takes the power, not necessarily the power out of the DM's hand, but one less thing that they have to constantly be focused on. Because there's been so many times in D&D campaigns where we've had NPCs that aren't necessarily labeled as sidekicks, but they're just NPCs that we have around. And then we try to figure out, what can we do with them? How do we use them? How do we utilize them?
Who can speak this language? Does anybody else see in the dark? Whereas when you're handing a sidekick character sheet over,
they have all the information as a player that you need to be able to utilize that character. And you're not not wasting time at the table to figure out what characters can and cannot do. And I just think it's almost like a weight lifted. So that's my thoughts anyway. I mean, they do it now.
Okay,
so.
I want to ask you guys, because Megan, you run Tobal mechanically, and
Yeah.
Dave, you sit there and watch it being run. So, like, we have the person actively doing it and the person watching. I want to know, is it better to roll a sidekick after someone's turn on the same initiative? Do you like it better when Tobal goes on Megan's initiative, or when he has his own initiative?
On the same turn as the player.
That just makes more sense for you guys?
Yeah.
It allows that player to map their turn out, and they get their one turn in the spotlight this round. Let's not give them the talking stick
Don't let
twice.
me shine twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then that also, like, I feel like if you were to split it up, then to your point, I would be able to interact with my my sidekick twice in one round.
Well, it's not just that. It's like you and your sidekick share a special bond that your players may not share with each other, right?
Yeah.
So when there is combat, they're going to be more in tune with each other than the people around them. So having them act at the same time, I think, lends itself to that, right? Like, it makes sense.
And 90% of the time, I'm telling him what to do. So it's kind of like, it'd be nice to be like, go do this thing. And then all of a sudden, he goes to do it. Like, you know, it just makes sense.
All right, so before we wrap this up, let's cut to our last ad break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit r/itsamimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes and comments. Engagement like that help us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
All right, so one thing that I didn't really mention before that I thought was absolutely worth mentioning here is that this is a really good opportunity to get your players that are maybe a little bit quieter in the roleplay department, give them their ability to shine a little bit. Everybody, like, players are an expert at something. People they have their things that they like, they have their interests, they're an expert in something, okay?
Yeah.
If you can take that, what the player does, and apply that to a sidekick, maybe that player will allow themselves to bleed through it a little bit and give them a little more comfort, so because they know what they're talking about when they're being an expert, right? Like, it really can open up this whole other side of a character, of a player, not a character. And I thought that was kind of a really interesting use of the sidekick as well. Did you guys have any other interesting uses of a sidekick you have thought of?
Oh, I can think of many uses of a sidekick, but...
Oh, baby.
Gross.
Yeah. But honestly, just to tack on to what you were saying there about helping a player kind of come out of their shell. You guys know that I had my own tactics for either of you, for both of you, and because both of you came to an established table.
I did, yeah.
Right, when we were playing. And I had a very specific tactic that I used for each of you. And did you
You
ever
made
figure
me
it
the
out?
leader of the fucking...
Yeah, I made you the leader,
Yeah.
right? So I made you have to talk.
Yeah.
Do you know what I did for you?
You made me punch jellies and...
Yeah, that's honestly, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. Is I gave impossible combat so that while everyone else was role-playing and panicking, the super pragmatic, logistical Dave would sit there and say, my guy fights. Oh, my guy fights. How can we fight our way out of this? And and suddenly the combats became chessboards for you to engage, because that way when Dan would be like, over here, you'd be like, no, over here. Right? And it got you and Dan interacting more, which is always a bad idea. But it became louder at the table and you started to interact because you didn't know Megan or Casey. Well, you knew Megan kind of through the podcast.
What's up?
But you didn't really know Casey that well. So I like the idea of using sidekicks to do that, but I would still say I believe the DM should be in charge of the characterization of the sidekick, whereas the player should be in charge of the agency and mechanics of them.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot from not a lot, but it takes more from the DM to get it set up and working right.
Yeah, I like the idea of saying, okay, and your sidekick will cower in the corner for this. So the DM is the one that's going to either put the sidekick on the map or off the map. You would know that your sidekick is going to be panicked because he comes from a background where he was raised in an orphanage. There are orphans in danger, right? Like, he's going to head in that direction, which means that even though it's happening on your turn and you get to roll, this is his priority. These are his motivations. Here's his objective in this scenario, right? And what that's going to do as well is it's going to not reinforce the idea that this is another full player character at the table, because when it comes time to role play or you go shopping or whatnot, are you guys splitting your loot equally among all the players and sidekicks?
No, man.
No, it's a trickle-down economy.
Absolutely.
Emphasis on the trickle.
This is a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
It's to sign up and pay the intro price.
And I think that for new players or inexperienced players or players that just have not interacted with sidekicks before, they're tempted to treat them as equal members of the party when they're very much not. These are storytelling tools, right? Engaging, interesting, and versatile, but they're still there to support your players.
Yeah. But like to your point in saying that they're like storytelling tools, I find that I enjoy the kind of balance that we have going right now. And I've had this with a couple of other sidekicks I've played with in other games where the role-playing aspect, so you're not taking too much time at the table having a role-playing moment with that character. You can almost say to your DM, hey, we're going to have this conversation. I'll message it to you later, or we can do a midweek content thing. We keep saying we're going to do midweek content.
Yeah, total sidebar. It's been 6 fucking weeks.
We never do.
No.
But I think that that's a great opportunity to be like, yes, we're going to talk about this, but it is very specific to my character, so I'm okay with having that conversation outside of game and give the team the Coles notes of what they require to know. And then that can be how you kind of navigate not taking up too much role-playing time at the table. Because I know that you enforced me to be the leader of the last campaign that we played, and now I tend to be pigeonholed into being the leader of things because Dan just looks at me like I own him.
It's because
Dan needs someone to tell him what to do.
he is legitimately scared of you, and that is what it is.
I always play strong, independent female characters. I guess that's the problem.
Why?
I don't know, man. Am I projecting? I don't know. But again, that's a good way of kind of like navigating taking up too much roleplay time if your character wants to talk to their sidekick too often. Like that's a tip or a hint I would give. All right, so that's it for our discussion on sidekicks. Make sure that you subscribe or follow and check back regularly to see what inspirations and insights we'll have for you in the future. Next week, we'll be heading up into the Phlogiston to bob gently along the flow rivers and see some of the local playable races, aka lineages now, that exist out there.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, www.itsamimic.com, a store with some It's a Mimic merch, and a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits, and don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's it for our discussion on sidekicks. Make sure that you subscribe or follow and check back regularly to see what inspirations Yeah. You guys are the fucking worst. I'm going to start that all over again. Sorry. Can you die? You know what I mean.
Indomitable.
And Megan, you're indomitable. Ew, that was really gross. That I don't know if the mic picked that up, but that was disgusting what you just did. Ew! Oh!
So Dave just cracked his nose. Yeah, here we go.
He looked me in the eye and he did it.
Hold on. When we were younger, he was behind me in a van and I was trying to get out and he was like grabbing me by the back of the shirt.
Oh.
And I turned around with my elbow up and I broke his nose. And we just thought he had a bloody nose and it just never set right. And now he can make it crunch.
I've broken my nose like 8 times.
Oh, I hate that for you. And I hate that for me right now.
Well, I broke it 7. You broke it once.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I get an assist on this.
Oh my god. Anyways.
I feel special anytime.
You're very special.
Yeah, anytime you need that wet thud.
You're so special.
Yeah.
Did you just call it a wet thud?
That's actually a better name for your lion.
I'm gonna name my next sidekick Wet Thud.
That is a warrior name.
He's going up there with Goop Sack.
He's going to come out and he's clearly going to be a bugbear and his name is going to be but translation is
Wet Thud.
Wet Thud.
Wet Thud, yeah.
I hate it so much. Okay, getting back to it.
Now the monologue.
Okay, see you next time.